And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I am Michael DeLon. Today, I am talking with Joe Gitto. Joe, well, first of all, thank you for spending some time with me and being my guest on Experts Speak today.
Michael, it's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me on. I'm looking forward to our time together.
Well, you are welcome, Joe. I'm super excited, too, because Joe does something that not many people do that all business owners really need to be thinking about, and that's really an exit strategy for your business. If you're a small business owner, you really need to be thinking about how to build your business so that you can exit it someday, whether that's a sale or transfer, whatever. We're going to talk about all of that. You need to be thinking about it. Joe has experience. He can help you with it. So, Joe, as we start diving into this conversation, tell me, how in the world did you get to doing what you do today?
So it's a great question, and I kind of backed into it. In 2019, I had sold my fourth business, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with the rest of my career. I thought I wanted to become a financial planner, and then I realized that every third person in Florida is a financial planner, wealth manager. Then I said, well, this is not really a strategy. And then I started thinking about the businesses that I had built and sold and what I wish had gone differently and some of the frustrations I experienced. And so being an entrepreneur, I said, well, if you're going to complain, then go fix it. And so Blue Sky was born.
I love it. I love it.
And we launched in April of 2020. You know, right in the middle of a pandemic is always a good time to launch a business.
Totally. I think that's brilliant. But hey, the deal is, if you've got an opportunity and an idea and you can actually serve people, it's always a good time to launch a business. It might be a little more challenging, but there are so many business owners out there who they're so focused on success. They're not thinking about succession and what do I do with this business? So let's talk a little bit about, what does it mean when you talk about exiting a business, succession planning, and things of that nature for what I would call small business owners. I think you work with companies primarily under 25 million in gross revenues, right?
That is correct. And that was very strategic in our part.
All right, we'll talk about that. Why was that? And then we'll get into the other things.
Sure. So again, go back to, the businesses I sold were all less than $20-30 million, right? And if you've got a business that's worth $75-100 million, you have people tripping over themselves to try and help you, right? Because you've got people trying to get you tax services. They want to invest your money. There's all these things happening around you. And you've got a business that's worth $10-15 million and you can hear the crickets, right? Nobody's really bending over backwards to try and help you. And my question was, you've got somebody who spent a lifetime building a business. It's probably their biggest asset. There is value in there more than they probably realize. Why is nobody paying attention to this? And that's why we decided to go to this end of the market. And what we're doing to try and serve this market in as cost-efficient way as possible is that we're mixing and matching our capabilities with some in-house and some strategic partnerships so that we can get the best guidance for every business owner without putting them into a box. We don't believe one size fits all. So we don't have a customized program. What we have is a suggested program, and you can pick and choose in there what you want or not want to do.
Okay.
So that at a very high level.
Fascinating. Okay. So now let's dive deep and start talking to business owners and somebody who's been around. I mean, our business started in 2013, right? So I've been around 11 years, 12 years. My son is my chief operating officer. All of that. Talk to some other business owners about what is an exit strategy. When do you start planning for it? What do I need to think about? I mean,
so I always say begin with the end in mind, right? Because at some point you're always going to have to exit your business. And let's also go by the premise that nobody's promised tomorrow. So you should always have some kind of a contingency plan in place. Yeah. Things happen, right? Divorces happen, deaths happen. If you've got partners, disputes happen. God knows I've gone through 2 of those. Yeah. So having a plan in place is something you should always be thinking about. But realistically, if you're thinking like, this is really where I want to not be involved day to day, a runway of 18 to 36 months is really where we find that we can have the most impact on the business owner, because it gives us an opportunity to go in and work with them to clean up their financials, because most small businesses are on QuickBooks. Yep. Their chart of accounts is alphabetical. Their accounting is terrible. And so that's never going to get you through due diligence. And so that's part number one. But then we also work with several pieces of software where we get really deep into the business through these assessments. And maybe the best way to explain this is kind of take you through our process.
Oh, yeah.
So we broke it into 4 phases. And like I said, you're not obligated to use all four, but generally the way I like to start with a business owner is because I'm sure you have a number in your mind of what your business is worth. And I will promise you that 99% of the owners I talk to are always higher than what the business is actually worth.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I like to do a fair market valuation just so that I make sure at least we're in the right church, if not the same pew together, right?
There
So
you go.
that's step number one. The second thing I want to do is I want to try and understand what businesses like yours will have changed hands for in the last 36 months. And it's
Okay.
hard to get good information on private businesses, but there are some out there, and you can also use some public companies for guidelines. So we have a rough idea of here's where you are, here's where we think the market says you should be. And then the third thing we do is, because we're really trying to build this holistic program for you as a business owner, is you're selling your business, and I'm going to just pick a number, but you're selling your business for $3 million. Well, what does that mean? Right? For some people, $3 million is life-changing. For other people, it gets them through the decade. So
Yeah.
it all has to fit into that context. And so we go through that exercise in phase one, and then we're going to take a stop there, and you're going to do one of two things. You're going to say, wow, not the number I wanted, or I don't really think I want to do this, or I think you're an idiot and I don't want to work with you, right? It's going to be one of those, but we're going to have a break point there. But generally the question I get is, why is my business valued at this number when you said the market was here? And so then we go to phase two. And in phase two, we don't even charge for this. This is really a vetting process in both directions. So I'm going to send you links to 2 different softwares that we use. You're going to spend about an hour taking these assessments. I'm going to get back a series of the data dump, and then we're going to build these reports for you. And then we're going to do a 1-hour consultation. And I'm going to take you through the different parts. And it's really focused on things we can do for the business, but also things that you do for the business owners. Statistically, more than 60% of business owners within a year of selling their business regret selling the business. And it's not for the money, it's because they're bored out of their mind, right? Especially if you're the boomer generation, right? We pride ourselves on 50, 60-hour weeks. Sounds nice to fill it up with drinking coffee on the deck and playing golf. They ain't gonna fly. No. So we work on both of those paths with you. And then one of two things happens there, right? They're the business owner that looks at this and goes, yeah, I'll implement this with my team, and then we'll call you. And that's the business owner whose business I would never be able to sell, and I wish them the best of luck. And there's the business owner who says, this is really interesting. How do we do it? And then we go to phase three. So in phase three, we're really looking at this list of action items and say, what do you really want to tackle? How long do you want to tackle this for? And then we build a scope of services, and then it's a monthly retainer. We generally use a system. It's a management system. It's known as EOS. We use it with the business owners. You're familiar with it.
Oh, yeah.
That's a requirement if you're going to work with us on phase three, because that's how I'm going to manage your organization. So I'm going to help build in your accountabilities. And then we take, we will revalue the business every 6 months with no charge, because essentially what we're saying to you is, barring something macro happening, you should be able to start seeing the value of your business going up. And so we work with you through that period. And then when you're ready to sell, we start looking at the exit option. So you have a succession plan in place, you have a son. Sometimes it's a management team. Sometimes there's family, but they don't want to be involved. So we're going to go outside. Now, is it a strategic buyer? Is it a financial buyer? And we do all of that work. We'll then work with you to prepare you for due diligence. So having been through so many of these already, we try to anticipate the questions before they're asked. We put together a good package because most business owners don't realize this, but the negotiations generally start when they shake your hands, right? And especially if you're working with private equity, they're sharp. They're remembering what you said, and they're looking to validate along the way. And so we work really, really hard to make sure that we're dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and that we're going to present you in the best light possible, so that there's less negotiation off of that letter of intent price you're going to get. And then so the other thing we do very differently than most people are out there is we don't ask for an exclusive period. So if we're taking you to market, and in a few months you feel like this is not working for you, you give us 30 days notice and we cancel out.
Wow. That's
so cool. It's a very, very different model that exists out there.
Yeah. No, that was, thank you, by the way, just walking us through that. Cause I in my head, I really didn't have a category. I didn't have a picture. And you gave me 2 pictures, and forgive me if this steps on your toes. One was the picture of like a realtor. I always look for something that I can resonate with. Okay. So if I'm going to sell my house, I've got an idea of what my house is worth, but they're going to do some comparable things, right? And say, no. Similar to what you do. That's
good analogy. Absolutely.
Okay. And then what you're doing to prepare the due diligence and all of that is kind of like a trial attorney who's doing
Mhm.
depositions and preparing you to go to court because they know what the other side's going to ask. You've been there. You understand the dance that's going to take place. I'm pretty clueless. In what I do, Joe, I tell people it's like creating your book is like walking into a dark room that you've never been in before. It's
Right.
scary. I've been in the room 1,000 times. I know where the furniture is. I know where the light comes. Same thing here, right? I've never sold a business. I don't know the first thing about it. That's why Joe does what he does, right? And I guess what I want to share with our audience, Joe, is if you've got a business that you're building, there's value there. And
Yes.
Joe can help you. I love what you said about EOS and running and helping them build the value because my business, I honestly don't think I'll ever sell it. I'm hoping it's in the family for many, many generations because it's kind of the goose that lays the golden eggs. I
Mhm.
want to take care of the goose, but Joe can
Yes.
help you do that to give you an option of whether you want to sell it or keep it or what is that? Is that fair? Is that right?
It is fair. And a lot of times too, people are looking to sell their business. A lot of times what we hear is because I'm burnt out. But then when you start going in and you start building a management team around them and you start putting processes in place,
Yes.
it becomes fun because they're actually making money and not working as hard. And so maybe they don't want to exit. And we're absolutely fine with that.
Yeah.
And then the other part I wanted to mention is that really when we get into that phase 3, along with really building the value in the business, is where we're also looking at your taxes, because at the end of the day, it's not what you sell the business for, but it's what you keep for what you sold the
Amen.
business for. So we're going to do a lot of tax planning in conjunction with your financial planning, make sure your estate planning is buttoned down. All of those things we're going to look at. We're going to make sure that you have the proper insurances in place. So we're taking a really, really holistic view of you as a person and then you as a business owner combined.
That's huge. That is so big, Joe, because I think most business owners don't really get the gravity of the asset that they are sitting on, the goose, because we're so focused on, well, my top line revenues are here and my profits are there. Okay. Does that have anything to do with the value of your business, the intrinsic value? Is it even saleable because you don't have systems? Right?
That is a great point. And I'll tell you a quick story. So I had a
Sure.
gentleman call me one time and he says, I've got a business. We're doing 8 million a year in revenue. I think it's worth $10 million. Can you help me sell it? Sure. Tell me a little bit about the business. We're talking da, 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 da. I get down to clients. So tell me, who are your clients? Well, 95% of my clients come from 95% of my revenue comes from one client. And I said, so you don't have a business, you have a contract. And how long does the contract extend for? It's renewable every 12 months. There's literally no value to that business.
Right.
He didn't like the answer, but those are the kind of things, right, where people don't understand. And then you get other people who are sitting there going, yeah, I don't think this is worth much. And then you go in and you start peeling back the onion and you go, I can get you like $5 million for this business. And they're completely floored.
Right.
So
yeah. And that's because you've got such a broad experience. I mean, you've built and sold 4 or 5 companies. And
this is number 5.
This is number 5. And so Joe's been around the block a few times. I love what you said. And one of the things I read about is just, you don't have to make the mistakes that Joe's made. He's taken the knocks for you. But you're opening up this box, I think, that business owners need to start peering into to go, you know what, if you're in your mid 50s and you've been running a business for a decade or two, you really need to reach out to Joe and say, okay, what does this thing look like? This is not an overnight weekend project. This is a planning project. But if you're thinking about retirement, maybe not, but you have an asset that you've built here that could actually provide streams of income. All right, here's a question I have, Joe. Somebody sells their business $3 million. Is it like the lottery? Do I get all the money at once? Do I stream it out over time? How does all that work?
So that really is going to depend on who you're selling to and what does it look like, right? So, yeah, there are situations where you can get the majority of the money at closing. Maybe you're doing a sale to your management team and you're going to give them an opportunity to pay you out over time. Depending on the size of the company, it might be an ESOP. And so there's different ways to that you can slice that.
Okay. And I assume that's part of the conversation you have with a business owner to go, well, I am not a tax guy, Joe, but I'm assuming if I got a big lump of money, $1 million, $2 million from my company, Taxman Max is going to be standing there going, well, hello, my new friend, right? Versus if I could spread it out over time, if I could spread it out over 25 years, as part of my retirement income or something, or maybe I want to go start a new business. And I think right?
You can start doing estate planning too, right? Because you can start gifting away shares. There's a lot of different things that you can do that will, minimize the tax and maximize the value you're going to get. I mean, everything we do is geared towards maximizing the value of your business.
Now, okay, you just said something that just opened up a whole new idea to me. So many times you sell a business, you think cash. I'm going to give cash to the next generation or to my grandkids. What if you gave them stock in your business that you're selling to somebody else, so they have stock in a company that you know? That's a fascinating idea.
Yeah.
So
there are different vehicles you can use to do that. And so we work closely with a bunch of different estate planning attorneys that, are experts in that field. I always tell people I'm smart enough to ask the questions, but not smart enough to give you the answer. And that's why I turn to the experts.
Absolutely. And that's why people need to turn to you, Joe, because you do something that's really specific, working with businesses with revenues of below 25 million. So that's most small business owners in America, I would say, and helping them really monetize the asset that they've built, the golden goose that they've built. They don't have to just walk away from it. And I would assume, bad assumption, but if most business owners did this by themselves, selling it to the management team or something, odds are you're going to miss something along the way, whether it's the price or is that?
Yeah. You're going to leave money on the table because you may sell it for too little. You're probably not going to sell it for too much. You're probably not going to be as efficient tax wise as you can be. And the other part is you probably haven't built a plan for yourself. So you're going to wake up in the morning and you're going to be itching to go back into the business. There are a lot of things that can go wrong along the way if you're doing it yourself. And look, some people do it. I mean, I've heard stories where, there was a gentleman who he was 70 years old. He walked into his son's office one day and said, "That's it, I'm done," and handed him the keys. And that was the succession planning. And I don't have to tell you how poorly that went. So, yes. Which is why we were having the conversation, because he's like, I don't even know what I don't know about this business. Right. So, people think that they're saving money, and in the long run, they're spending way more than they think they're saving by not putting the proper planning in place and knowing all the options that are available to them. And look, a lot of us, when you're a business owner, I'm sure you feel this way too. It's like one of your children. You want to leave your legacy behind. I don't think any of us want to be in a position where we sell it and we see the business damaged or go out of business within a couple of years. You want to see it thrive. And if you sold it to your management team, you have an attachment to your employees. Look, the last business I sold was a business that I literally hated being in, and I couldn't wait to get out of it. And yet the day we went to closing, I was worried about my employees, the clients that we had and our vendors. It's who we are. That's why we've built successful businesses. And so preserving your legacy is as important as it is getting you the maximum dollars for your business.
Yeah, that's so good. And there's so much more to this. I'm sure there are just layers upon layers that we could dive into. Who's an ideal client? When if somebody's listening to this, when is the right time for them to honestly just reach out to them, to you? Should their revenues be above 200,000? Should they be cresting $1 million? I mean, or is it just case by case?
It is case by case. I will tell you that generally, if you're doing less than 2 million a year, it's a little hard for us to put some of these strategies in place because there's just, there's the economic part of it. But I generally look at it as, at a minimum, every business owner should have a contingency plan. And I'll share a story with you. I was talking to somebody one day. He was not sure I want to do this. I said, and he was older than I am. And I said, you should at least put a contingency plan in place. Well, how much is that going to cost? And I said, well, let me ask you a question, because he had mentioned to me earlier in the conversation that he was a skier. He said, if you went skiing this weekend and you hit a tree, you didn't die, but you were disabled and you were in the hospital for 6 months. What's your business going to look like when you came back in? He goes, I would have rather died than come back to what the business would look like in 6 months. Well, this is why you need a contingency plan, and you need to start building plans around it. We all think we're invincible, but we're not. And we're not. So to answer your question, everybody at a minimum should start thinking about a contingency plan. And then the other question I have is, even if you're thinking you're not exiting, why would you not want to create more value to your business? Absolutely. But then there's also the third dynamic, which is somebody could just ring your bell and there's an unsolicited offer. That's how I sold my third business, and I was up in New York, living in New York, and that's how I ultimately ended up in Florida. I mean, I went to a meeting thinking that I was in this thinking that I was going over a client situation, and instead it was an offer for my business that I had no idea was coming to me. And it was like a whirlwind. I still remember it. The first conversation happened on December 6th, and we closed on March 31st. And I was completely unprepared for all of that. And I'm sure I left money on the table because I stayed there for 5 years and built it into a really sizable business unit. But I look back at it and go, well, if I had some things in place, I may have done better than I did. So there's always that piece of it. And the other thing I put out to business owners who are not looking at retirement, but people who are going to raise money, you're going to take on private equity. That's a form of an exit because you're giving away part of your business. And the better light your business is in when you're dealing with private equity, and just having somebody on your side who has been through that can really help you have a better transaction. And set the expectations, because a lot of people think when they take in investor money, they're like, well, now my problems are solved. I have money in the bank. And I go, no, you solve that problem. Now you get a bigger problem because now you get somebody else's money. And
That's
that is way more stressful.
And they probably, they're going to, do some things with it. So that's fascinating. I love the contingency plan. And that's really important. I tell people all the time, my question to them is, all right, Joe, do you have a will? And I'm shocked at how many people don't even have a will. It's like, that's the contingency plan for your life. You need one for your business. I had a prospect the other day say, okay, Michael, what happens if you die? I said, my son takes over and he's got all the systems and the people and everything. And they're like, okay, good. Now let's move forward. Because that was one of their questions. Because if you're the front person, like I'm the front person of my business, right? Everybody sees Michael. I just happen to have a great team behind me. That Michael is not needed in this business very much. And that's how we really need to build our businesses with great value if it's going to be saleable, because really, I think a buyer for my company doesn't want me around most of the time.
And it's not you. It's all of us. They don't want us around.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say that. I generally say to people, my job is to make you irrelevant in your business. That's how I've done my job well.
I think it's great. Yeah, that's one of our 3 to 5 year visions, is to get Michael out of the business. And so I only do what I want to do in the business, and they love me, and they've got me in my little prison cell going, that's what you do. Anything else.
Just where you can cause enough trouble, but not too much, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Joe, man, we could talk some more. I've got about 30 more questions for you, but we don't have all that time. Where do they find you if this is just intriguing to them and they want to get more information, maybe have a call with you or something? Where do they go?
Sure. So they can go to our website. It's blueskyexitplanning.com. And they can always email me directly. It's joe@blueskyexitplanning.com. Or you can hit me up on LinkedIn as well.
Excellent. I love the simplicity of that. blueskyexitplanning.com. What I'm going to do, Joe, is I'm going to capture those, get them in the show notes. So if our listeners are, running their business, or they're walking the dog, or exercising, doing whatever they do, they can come back to the show notes. You can connect with Joe on LinkedIn, at his website, have the conversation, because you are building something as this entrepreneur, as a business owner, that does have value, and you need to treat it, for what it's worth. And yes. Joe has the expertise to help you build the value over time and position you with at least knowledge and expertise, but to go, okay, what do I want to do with this asset that I have now? And I love the fact that you don't work on this long-term contingency. It's a relationship.
It's a relationship, and it's about building value. I have to be on my game every single day for you.
Yeah. I love that. So reach out to Joe and blueskyexitplanning.com, have the conversation, and see how he can help you plan for the succession of your successful business. Joe, thank you, sir. Thanks for being my guest today.
My pleasure, Michael. Thanks for having me on.